you pray with me? God, we give you thanks for this morning. We give you thanks for the loud hosannas and for the ways that we are called to praise you. God, continue to be with us in this moment. God, open our ears that we may hear you, and open our hearts and minds that we may know you in new ways. God, we love you and praise you. Amen. As many of you know, Daniel's wife, Michelle, serves as a pastor. And often Daniel will start his sermon with an illustration that Michelle has come up with. Or sometimes they're her illustrations. Or with a story that involves her and their 2.5-year-old Eli. Well, this morning our sermon begins inspired by Michelle. We were sharing this week as we were both preparing to preach, and she shared this illustration with me about a connection between a black hole and Palm Sunday. And while our sermons have gone in different directions, it was too good not to begin with a black hole. If you have paid any attention to the news this week, especially on Wednesday, you know that a group of scientists unveiled the first ever image of a black hole. And Denny has that image for us. Yeah, this image went viral this week. And upon first glance, it may not look all that impressive. If you don't know what it is, it looks kind of blurry. And if you don't know what it is, it could just be this random grouping of light with this black thing in the middle. But this picture is anything but random. It has taken 200 scientists in 20 different countries, almost a decade, to produce this picture. And it confirms scientists' predictions of what a black hole is and how mind-blowing this all is. Now, I was not a science major in college, and I am not in seminary for science now. And I know that there are a few of you in the congregation who actually work for NASA. And so if I get a few particulars wrong, I apologize, but I'm going to try and explain this as best as a non-science major can. This morning, I want you to focus on the very center of the picture on the screen. In the middle of that bright ring around it, that bright ring of plasma and gas, there is this deep black well. This black well is an exit portal from our observable universe. And what is crazy is that while it looks like that center is completely black, it looks like it is completely black and dark in the center. But what we cannot see is that there is actually light in the middle. But instead of seeing that light, we see the darkness because space and time is collapsing in on itself, forming a single point with infinite density. And this point of infinite density has such a strong gravity that as the light approaches it, the light on the outside approaches it, it enters into this region where nothing can escape its grasp. This region is called the event horizon. And once the light enters this point, there is no going back. The light will enter into the black hole. There's no escaping it. This morning is an event horizon for us as a church. This morning, as Jesus enters into Jerusalem, there is no stopping what is about to take place. There's no stopping that in just a few days he will be betrayed and handed over and killed. There's no stopping that Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday are coming. They are coming, and yet Jesus enters into Jerusalem in this important moment that cannot be missed. Jesus' entry is full of joyful praise. All that has happened in the story so far is pointing back to history. History of a king. History of people spreading their cloaks and laying them down out of honor for the person entering. History of people shouting words that were familiar in the Hebrew Scriptures, announcing blessings upon the man riding in. History that goes back to King David and the selection of kings throughout the Hebrew Scriptures. The streets are lined with many who have been following Jesus through his ministry. These people are witnessing to the healing and the deeds of power that Jesus has done. They are shouting without any fear, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King. Blessed is the King." This is the part that begins to make some in the crowd really uncomfortable. This is the moment that turns this whole ordeal into an event horizon moment, a turning point in Jesus' ministry where there is no going back, because the people are claiming him to be king. The people are proclaiming his goodness and his power, and all of a sudden, it makes the situation a little dangerous. Because if the people proclaim him as king, what is going to happen next? Who will he reign over? Who will he try and remove from power so that he can be in control? What does this king really want to do? These are the questions the Pharisees have. And the Pharisees need the crowd to stop shouting. They try and get them to stop. The Pharisees try and get Jesus to quiet everyone down. They want Jesus to just control his people. But Jesus says, "I tell you, even if these were silent, the stones would shout out." While the Pharisees may not be able to open their hearts to the celebration of who Jesus is, Jesus says that all of creation will cry out. There is nothing the Pharisees can do to stop this crying, to stop the shouts of loud hosannas. In Matthew's gospel, so this morning we read Luke, but in Matthew's gospel, the disciples beg Jesus not to go to Jerusalem. They beg him because they know that if he goes to Jerusalem, that there is no turning back. He has warned them that if he goes to Jerusalem, that he will suffer at the hands of men. And yet Jesus says, "This is where I have to go." And he invites the disciples to journey with him. And the disciples follow. They follow him into Jerusalem, not quite sure what is about to take place. They choose to journey with him and to stay with him almost up until the very end. While the disciples will ultimately betray and deny him, for this moment, they stand by his side. For this moment, they are crying out, "Blessed be the King," because they know of the goodness and the love and the power that he holds. The disciples know that he is king. They know that he is the Son of God, and they know that they need to witness. Even as he enters Jerusalem and they know that they are approaching the end, for now they have boldness to witness. We are at this event horizon moment, and not just in Scripture, but in our everyday lives. Every day we are not sure of what will come next, and we are left with how to respond. Every day we experience the joy and the love, but also the questions and the difficulty that come with following Jesus and we, like the disciples, are asked, how will we respond? Every day we witness injustice and hatred, inequality and loss, and we are left with, how will we respond? Will we be part of the crowd, shouting loud praises for now only, later to abandon Jesus at the cross alone? Will we be like the Pharisees who want everyone to be quiet, for the disruption to just stop? Or will we be like the rocks, who will cry out even as the rest of the world is quiet? This is a hard question, because if you are anything like me, the ideal answer and the actual answer may not really be the same. I would like to say that I am always like the rocks, always crying out words of praise or words against the injustice of the world, words of celebration of love for God and for neighbor. And yet, I think more often than not, I am like someone in the crowd, or even sometimes like the Pharisees. When the unknown is approaching, or grief is large, or sadness and loss are before us, it is easier to walk away. It's easier to be silent. It's easier to disengage or pretend like none of it is happening. To keep going through our day to day, trying to pretend like none of it is happening, trying to move past whatever is going on. And yet Jesus calls us this morning to follow the light, to engage in the hard conversations, to sit with all of the emotions, to ask the hard questions, and to wrestle with what it looks like for us, not the person sitting next to us, but for us to follow and to cry out like the rocks, to follow the light into the hard week that is ahead. You see, the light, Jesus has been traveling, and he has reached this horizon moment. There's no going back. The light is shining, the light has intensified, but Jesus is about to be pulled into this black hole. A hole where it seems like there is utter darkness. And yet we know from science, and we know from our scriptures, that this is not the end of the story. There is light within the void that we cannot see. There is more that is coming. And so the question for each of us this week, and the question for each of us as life is difficult, is, will you travel with the light through this horizon moment? Will you continue along the journey of faith even when it seems utterly dark and like there is nothing left? Will you trust the light that there is more to come? There is more to come, and it is good. It is full with light and newness, but for now that light is beyond our vision. This week we have this opportunity to live out the liturgy, to live out our scriptures, and to live out the ways that we often practice as Christians. The liturgy helps us to journey from this moment of triumphal entry, to community around a table, to the cross full of darkness and unknown, to these days of waiting, but then to new life. The question is, will you journey with us? Will you journey with the light in this moment of event horizon? Or will you close your eyes? Will you close your eyes until we are through the black hole and into something new? The journey this week will not be easy, but we hope that you will join us, because the journey this week will bring transformation like no other. Amen.